John Freeman with Video 360, and just wanted to introduce our panelists today. Got one guy running a little late, he'll be joining us. But first we have Joe Way with USC. Joe is with the HEPMA organization, and he can address that when we get around to him. Jason Mobley with Zoom. Jason's our great education resource at Zoom itself, and he's going to have some really good insights for us. Then we have Reggie Smith. Reggie is with USDLA, probably the most well-recognized distance learning association, and he's going to have some very interesting information about how things are being done nationwide right now, and maybe some insight from outside of the country. And then we have Dana Hess. Dana Hess is a elementary school teacher in San Diego Unified, and she's actually feet on the street. This is somebody who's actually trying to get stuff done. So I think we'll start off with asking Dana what kind of struggles that she's had, what obstacles she's come across, and ways that she's addressed it, and maybe a few things that need to still be done. So Dana, take it away.
I would say, well, first of all, I teach 7- and 8-year-olds, so there's a lot of support they need with learning technology and using technology that if they didn't have up until the spring of last year, they haven't had it since, with teaching from the classroom's perspective versus what I guess I would call triage at the end of last year, teaching them the triage type learning, and the teachers as well. I'm lucky my students had used some technology in our classroom with Google Classroom and such, but the way of engaging students is very difficult with 7- and 8-year-olds, because they tend to need a lot more one-on-one attention, and they tend to, literally roll off, or setting the parameters for attending school, whether it's virtual or not. We really have to say things like, you need to come dressed, not in your pajamas or your swimsuits, or sitting in bed with your stuffed animals and your dogs and having your brother or sister jump on you and wrestle over, because then it distracts every learner. We have to go to that extreme. Again, they're 7- and 8-year-olds, so we have to work through that. But then also, from my perspective as a teacher, trying to figure out what they truly can do independently, and being able to assess their work when I don't know what is independent. And then from my personal perspective, also learning how to use so many different platforms. All of a sudden, it was thrown to us in minimal training. I think I had a 20-minute training on what the heck Zoom even was in the spring. And since then, it's been me exploring most everything, along with ways of creating Google documents that I didn't use, that the kids would have to engage in, ways of trying to see, when you're trying to teach somebody to read, you need to see their eyes, you need to see what they're looking at, you need to see where their eyes are tracking, you need to see the text as they're doing it, and I can't always do that. Having the tools I need from home, as you could see, I'm in my dining room. I, after 35 years of teaching, had never thought I was going to make my house into a classroom. And having the materials I need, and having the materials the kids need to get to them in an appropriate way, having different parent perspective. I guess I should stop talking. But anyway, there's just so many unknowns and needs, but then putting into practice, a lot of this, like I said, I've done on my own, because our first official training doesn't even start till Wednesday. Tomorrow is my first official day back, when they're going to be giving us any kind of training, and I still don't know what it is. So considering that Monday the kids are coming and I don't know what it is they're expecting, I've been doing a lot of work on my own, creating so many different ways of engaging the kids with reading, attempting different reading techniques and lessons with, I figured out how to use Zoom breakout rooms so that I could have some small group work and partner work. But then we get the legal thing that an adult has to be in each room. So then I can't have the breakout rooms, and you can never meet with just one student. You always have to have at least another. So then that takes what they can do down to another level of not being able to read it. But that being said, I've had to purchase some physical materials with keyboards, the types of chairs for the house so that I can work. I'm going to have to be purchasing a large whiteboard. My brother graciously gave me the camera that I'm using now, which is a better camera for the kids to apparently hear me. So that's it. I don't know what else other than there's a whole lot of unknown. And then the fact that we may be going back into the classroom. So I have spent, easily 60 hours planning for virtual classroom, and my actual classroom, my physical classroom, needs to now be set up in case we go back in, but then being able to turn that off again and go back to virtual, which could very easily be the case. So I don't know, there's a whole lot of unknowns.
So it sounds to me like that's the biggest problem, is that there's no guidance, no direction coming from management, shall we say, giving you some indication of which direction you're going to go. Is that correct?
From, management comes from two levels for us, from the actual administrator at my site, excuse me, to the district level, and then obviously the state level as well for education. The state has been pretty generic but clear with what they say, and then our district had said one thing about there's a possibility of opening up after we were 14 days off, but then I think they're taking that back, and they're working with I believe it was UCSD medical team to see what's going on and get their input. And then from our site level, it starts tomorrow, I guess, the information chain.
John, you have a little insight on what's going on in maybe in the CSU world that might be able to trickle down to the K-12. What's your input on that, John? Of course, it'd be great if we had audio from you. Yeah, you're the expert. Okay. At any rate, one of the questions, maybe even Joe, you're actually in California as well.
How about now? Is this any better?
Yeah, we got you a lot better now, John.
Sorry about that. I want to apologize for being late. When you think things can't get even worse, you have fires in your neighborhood that take out your internet.
Oh my goodness.
For the good news here in Northern California, all of California, but the good news here in the Monterey Bay, those fires have been given a little bit of relief with a change of weather, but somehow that managed to take my internet out right at the start of this event. But the CSU, made a decision very early on to go totally online, and so they were able to spend the summer working with their faculty, both in providing the technology that faculty needed, giving them time to purchase the hardware that they need, set up facilities in their classrooms, their home studios, I should say, for their classrooms. And then CSU Monterey Bay did a whole series of professional development teams. So it wasn't just instruction, but they really partnered faculty with faculty who had previous experience in doing online and media work with the faculty who this may be new. But I think the state of California has 58 or 59 counties, I think. I forget the total number of K-12 schools. So the rollout has been very different by different schools. One of the things that this current situation is pointing out is the inequity that happens across the state in terms of access, not only in terms of access to to the internet, but access to the resources that are needed in the schools. So it's been a major challenge and a test for education in California, as it's been all across the country.
Anybody else? Joe, you're a fellow California. What's going on there?
Yeah, oh boy, what isn't going on here? It's interesting. Well, first off, I need to comment on something Dana said. I thought in college we were the ones that were having to tell people to wear clothes when they showed up to class. But it's interesting because we had, just completed an entire enterprise upgrade of all of our general use spaces to create hybrid teaching, which ironically was in process even before all of COVID. But with California, we didn't get approval to actually open. We're ready. We've got spaces, but we can't let people in to use them. So, you can do all the planning you want. You can do all the preparation, but you're still, at, the whim of what the government wants to do and it wants to allow you to do. And so what we have found then is, our faculty are coming in to use the spaces and we're live streaming from them, so that the students can get that experience, right? I mean, if you think at USC, it's not cheap to go here. And so when you have the students being able to see a faculty member at the chalkboard, at the whiteboard, actually, embracing, the college, look, it helps build comfort. Right. And also one thing we heard from a lot of the faculty, and I hate to be faculty at this point where you've, worked on your craft for 20 years in a classroom, and now you're told, here, go learn how to do this online. And your content wasn't, designed to be delivered that way. There's things like Quality Matters and other, groups that work on creating online content and online learning. And that wasn't able to be brought in when we did our initial, jump up. So now we've had to bring in, instructional designers to partner with our faculty to be able to, have them, teach in a way that, gives that, that synchronous look, because that's what the students are paying for. But then, the faculty miss the classroom, they miss that environment, the students miss it. So now how can you take that and be able to have them utilize the space, even though they're having to teach to a virtual environment? And you notice that if the faculty are more comfortable, they teach better. Then the students learn better. And that's where now you start to notice that kind of synergy come together between all different sides of it, and who knows what that will look like going forward, right? I mean, there's going to be a point where the county of LA and the state say, okay, you're in phase 3, you can now have people here. Well, maybe you still have faculty who are in, they're in a demographic that they're still at risk and they don't want to be there. Well, maybe you're going to have students in the room and they're going to be zooming in and on the screen. What does that look like? And it's an interesting, kind of dynamic because there is no one size fits all right now.
Joe, I think that the thing that you're pointing out is having the faculty be comfortable. And I think that's really one of the biggest challenge we face, because I think people's nervousness, uncomfortableness, whatever it is, their body language, their voice, that gets carried over to the students. They hear it. And so it really is a challenge to figure out how to raise that comfort level for faculty who've spent a long time doing something in one way and switching it to another.
Yep. Oh, 100%.
I agree. It's been a huge challenge. Like I said, I'm lucky because I like to learn, and my support and my family are technology people, so they help me. But there are teachers, no elementary teachers signed up to online. I mean, none of us thought this would ever be our reality. So there are teachers, and it tends to be in elementary, most things are hands-on projects and activities, and teaching kids truly how to have a conversation and doing that online. I mean, we really have to instruct. I mean, we have lessons around conversation, but I agree with some of what you were saying, Joe, that it depends also by school, because our district is huge, San Diego Unified, and we have very different demographics in different areas. So where I'm teaching, it might be a little more accessible for families to have technology and be home. But then there are others where the parents are working their best and working multiple jobs and trying to be at home to support their kids who have never done this. And it's huge. And what you were saying, Joe and John, both, I mean, my son, so then I go to the personal, though my son is a freshman in college this year, and his senior year ended crazy in high school, and starting as a freshman in college with 6 different classes and 6 different teachers now sending emails, and 6 different teachers using different platforms, and 6 different teachers using 6 different versions and programs of ebooks, and his anxiety level on top of it. I mean, yes, he wants to relate to these teachers. He's never taken a business law or calculus, and I think he would be so much better off if he could have a proximity to a teacher. But, you know, he's making the best of it. I'm not going to say that, I mean, we're in 3 weeks, and he is going to be moving to a flex schedule next week. So I'm also worried about that in his health. I mean, there's so much.
You know, the other thing too, Dana, that you bring up that I've seen nationwide is that, you know, we push teachers due to the pandemic into this remote learning environment, and you have instructional designers and they're doing a great job, but there's also pedagogical changes that have to be made, right? And I think that a lot of teachers are used to delivering one way, and even though that they're taught the technology or the tools of Zoom and how to use it, but they're missing the pedagogical changes to really draw that student in. And as you stated earlier, if the student is comfortable and they feel prepared, they're going to deliver better anyway. So I think we've got to reevaluate that process and do a better job there.
Yeah, Jason, I think the thing that you just mentioned there, they're being taught how to operate the tool. So they might learn in Zoom how to use a breakout room. Oh, Diana, I'm sorry that the challenges you have with your district in terms of some of the protections which are probably needed, but knowing how to set up a breakout room and move between them doesn't really tell you how to use it in an instructional sets in your classroom.
Yes.
Our basic thing is saying, you know, audio and video are key. I mean, that's the base. You have to be seen, you have to be heard. Clearly for the faculty, you have to do that. Well, your students have to be seen and heard. But what activities do you do to make that normal so it's not a crazy microphone check for the first 10 minutes of every conference? So we're trying to come up with strategies with our faculty to figure out how to use the functionality of the tools that they're using to incorporate some instructional settings and instructional activities. With the one support group, one of the faculty members, I should give credit, but sort of felt like this is the change between silent motion pictures and talkies. You know, some actors and actresses were able to make that transfer real easily, you know, that their voice, you know, could move, but some actors and actresses didn't make it because their voice didn't translate. But the bigger thing that happened when the change between silent and talkie pictures is that the scripts and the dialogues for the first talkies were very much like the silent pictures, you know, short lines, short sentences. But when once you could talk, you really changed the dialogue. And we were finding in our summer activities that the faculty members really had to think how they were going to change the dialogue. This is a very interactive communication tool if you want to be successful for learning. So how do you establish these new dialogues? And I don't know how you do it with kindergarten students. That terrorizes me, having spent a lot of time coaching in my children's kindergarten classes. But you know, it's that, I think, Jason, what you bring up, it's just not what can the tool do, but how do you apply it to the teaching instruction model you have, whether it be a lecture mode where you're trying to convey a bunch of information or a small graduate seminar for discussion.
Yeah, and the other thing that I would bring in is that it might be a little easier from a higher ed perspective to, you know, you have your students are a little bit older, but, you know, in Dana's situation, we're talking about young students here, right? K through 12. So the younger that you get, I think the more that you have to keep them engaged, because the parents are not always there to be interacting with them, right? So how do we solve that problem as well? it brings a lot of challenges up for sure.
But you bring up good points, especially with the younger children. As a father of a third grader and a college student, I get to see both ends of the bookend. And when the pandemic happened, teachers around the country, Reggie, how are you doing? I said, just as bad as you are, because now I have to sit in the bedroom and watch my kid, who actually grabbed a screen share from the teacher and is showing, the other little third graders Roblox. So it's not a perfect world. And just trying to make people comfortable with the technology and really to engage. I think that the benefit of the pandemic, despite it being a terrible thing, is happening is that I think parents will have a new appreciation for the teachers and instructors, and hopefully we will have a higher level of engagement in the education of their children. So hopefully our elementary teachers will not become the normal dumping ground that they have been for some time, and parents will really engage and understand what's going on with their kids and the gaps that have actually probably opened up with this pandemic, as far as summer learning loss. So there's going to be some gaps. I mean, my daughter, who's in a junior, bio, pre-med, organic chemistry tutor, her school does a series of drills, and now she's starting to engage. They just started social distancing, but they see the gap in some of the students that have to, really kind of climb out of the hole in understanding organic chemistry. Not my background, but definitely understanding that is the subject that changes your life. And so you really have to know that subject, or you probably pick another degree. So it's making people comfortable. My default is, and as I talk to teachers, let's get on Zoom, let's push all the buttons, let's see if we can crash and break it, and crash dummy this thing and make yourself comfortable, and do it on the fly. Even us experts, we've been doing this for quite some time. I see John online here, a USDLA Hall of Fame award winner, and everyone else. And so we all have experience in this space, but we have to make people hopefully become comfortable, and those that were allowed to ignore it can no longer ignore it. I'm assuming there are departments in higher ed that were allowed, because they were so successful in cranking out students, were allowed to ignore the online department that wanted to try to suck in some of their content. Well, now we're in a pandemic and threw that out the window.
And I think that's a good point too, is that if you look at what will we keep after, right? I mean, there is going to be a point where we do go back to an old normal, right? At least we all hope so. But what do we keep? Like, what we saw was, quote unquote, academic freedom used to mean I didn't have to put my syllabus on Blackboard. Well, that's gone, right? Now you've seen, provosts say, okay, I'm going to define your academic freedom now. And there's going to be certain practices that we're going to ensure always get done. And so can we keep those positive things, those repositories? There's those ways to give content. I mean, if you want to see maybe what is a positive, we're recording. How many books broke copyright laws and just got, photocopied? Now, I'm not saying it does done at USC, but I guarantee you it's been done all over. Photocopy it and send it out to people, because I've heard it being done. But maybe that opens up opportunities for more ebooks. Maybe now that helps save students costs with the multi-$100 textbooks, because we start finding options that we can post online and those types of things. So can we keep some of these good things that actually help kind of bridge that equity gap, which is actually, while we've seen it separate in some cases, we've also seen it become more narrow in other locations.
Yeah, Joe, I think that point about what things could improve, like Diana, is it Dana? I've got to get my glasses. You're talking about 6 professors doing things differently. We set up a course management system, and because of, quote, academic freedom, every faculty member used it differently, which meant our students had to navigate in so many different ways. So I think we're beginning to realize that there are some things that we need to do if we're student-centered to make it easier for them to be able to navigate. And on our campus, there was a lot of discussion with the faculty about, well, let's come up with some normal ways we do things, just even how we refer to the breakout rooms and the chat room, so that a student going from one faculty member to another faculty member wouldn't, have to change their mindset. But yeah, there's the copyright issue. I use a lot of cartoons in my classes. I've been told that I tell my students I'm like to tell jokes in class. They tell me I need to let them know when I've done it so they know when to laugh. So to make up for that, I'll use cartoons, and I buy the rights for the cartoons to use in my classroom. So I realized I was asked to make one of the presentations that I had done about, in this case, it was the future of technology. And it turns out that future of technology came real quick when the pandemic happened. I said, oh, this is great. I have the famous cartoon from the New Yorker where it says, on the internet, nobody knows you're a dog. And then there's a follow-up cartoon of that came out about 9 years later. It says, damn video cams, everybody knows you're a dog. And I said, oh, this is great. I'll use it today. And I said, wait a second. I don't have the rights to do that. And then Joe, like you said, I said, I could get away with anything. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of changes that the new old will not be the old.
Hey guys, we have a question for you here from Michael Baker. Besides integrating webcams into the classroom or home, what other technology do you see that can be used that will enhance the pedagogy and benefit the students at home?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Kelly. So there's a lot of features inside of Zoom, for example, that can help with that, but then there's also others. So let me focus on the others first. So one example that I use, and I actually teach, I'm a professor at 2 universities. So I teach a lot of IT classes, and then I have higher ed, and then I have younger students, right? So one example would be using Kahoot, right? So Kahoot.it is a nice gaming tool, and it's not just for kids. For example, when I actually started at Zoom and we went through the onboarding, every time we finished a section, we did a Kahoot. And everyone in the class competed to see how well you knew the information. And what you saw engagement of people that instead of zoning off, they wanted to pay attention because there was kind of a reward system for doing well in the Kahoot. So that gaming software would be one example. Also, something else that I use is Logitech Spotlight. So again, a lot of people, when they change slides and they're presenting, they use their keyboard. But the advantage of using a tool like this is it's automatically changing the slides with a button. And then they also have features where you can spotlight on a specific piece of text and zoom in. So I do like this feature as well. And then from a Zoom perspective, there's a lot of ways to engage people. Obviously with polling, and you don't always have to poll at the end, right? So what I recommend people do is to pre-build polls and be ready to launch them when the content needs it, right? So you might poll at the beginning to get the juices flowing. How many hours of sleep did you get last night? And then midway through content, then drop another poll to make sure that people are engaged, and then do one at the end. Also, we talked about breakout rooms earlier. One thing that I wanted to mention, and we actually announced this last week, is there's some new features on the education front that is specific to breakout rooms. So we have a customizable gallery view. So for example, if I want to create a seating chart, I can actually pin my students in a certain place, make them work in groups, which is a nice feature as well. And then also we're launching multi-spotlight. So you can spotlight up to 9 students per meeting, almost as a focus group. So that's another engaging feature. Also, we talked about hybrid classrooms, right? So the unit behind me is a Zoom room, and this particular one allows you to have a touch interface. So what I see a lot of teachers having issues with is Dana, steady writing, keep writing, Dana. So you have teachers that have traditionally written on a whiteboard. So inside the Zoom whiteboarding features, typically you have to use a mouse for that, right? And you can't write so well with a mouse as you can do this. With this unit back here, I can actually come in and click whiteboard, and this is shown over the screen. And then from here, I can either write with my finger, I can change colors, and if you record the class, it actually shows up really well in the recording. Even though you can't see this right now, if I actually connected this into our meeting, it would be digitized and you'd be able to see that. So there are a lot of features, and I would ask Joe or John or any other panelists if there's technology features that they've seen as well.
I would like to jump on a little bit of that. We use Kahoot, and we use Flipgrid and Castify, and I will tell you, I think the Flipgrid has been amazing, and I started it last spring, and my kids did one Flipgrid each week, which there's preparation for that, there's gathering your props, there's thinking about what you're going to say, and then there's creating your 90-second video presentation and then being able to share that with the kids. So there are a variety of programs. Like I've also created a Bitmoji classroom right now that has a lot of interactive parts, and I've linked it to YouTube, which has had some real helpful videos out there, background music for kids to play to help them focus. So I did some research on the best kind, and so that my kids can click on that in my Bitmoji classroom. They've also linked to different books online and videos of me reading, doing read-alouds, and Raz Kids and Moby Max and Epic. They're great resources, but the problem with all of those for me, like we were saying previously, is learning how to use them, but then the application and having the time now for me to go through. And remember, I teach reading, writing, math, social studies, science, PE, and fine arts. So I have to teach all of that, and I have to find the not just the applications, and now the hardware, the tools, where I had my Boxlight, or my, what used to be a Promethean board, but a Boxlight board in my classroom. And I loved using that constantly and getting the kids to get up and write on it. And the different monitors, like right now, I only have a laptop monitor. So it lies on me, it lays on me to do the purchasing now of all these things to set up a virtual classroom in my home. And then to think about how to do all that. I don't know how to set, I'm not an IT person. I am a elementary school teacher. So for me to try to figure out how to do all of that physical, the actual hardware, and to purchase that because I don't have the money for all of this, and then to learn the application of the, not just the hardware, but the different applications online for the different levels of kids, because within reading, I've got kids reading from a kindergarten level right now up to the end of 4th grade. So I have to find resources for everybody in those different levels. And then same thing with math and writing. So yes, I mean, there's part of it. And then, you know, I'm not going to say this is going to be a popular aspect, but then there's the union involved and what I can do. I don't want to get political here, what I can do. And sometimes I step out and do my own thing because it drives me crazy being held back by red tape, whether it's the union or the district or the state. I don't care. I just want to be a teacher. And so all of this infighting. And then we have parents now who are tech savvy and angry because of their life and what they're having to deal with. I get all of that. So then they're taking these Zoom videos and putting them out online, thank God this hasn't happened to me, and ripping on teachers. Look at, this is what they're calling teaching. This is crap. This is not a teacher doing a service to my child. So then you have parents that are angry that we're not back, parents that are angry that we are going back. So yeah, there's a lot, but I'd like to know, you know, so I'm sitting here right now, what you're saying is available on Zoom now, and I'm trying to learn all of that. But I'm somebody who's learning that. So then there are teachers who aren't. And so then you have 3 classrooms at one grade level, 3 or 4, and parents are seeing different things just in one school, whether it's the application and the pedagogy that we were speaking of. There's a lot there's a lot to this, and we have to move forward with technology. It is actually part of our Common Core state standards. We have to move forward with it. And it's good that the kids are learning this, but I don't know how to do it in this way.
Wow, that's all amazing stuff. Sorry, I'm still stuck on, I mean, just what you go through with dealing with the parents. And I mean, we're all going, I mean, all of us personally have our own opinions. Do you go back? Do you, math, all the stuff, right? We all have our own opinions, but then to realize you're handling, 32 kids' parents worth of that. And there's no right or wrong answer, right? It just is. And so definitely feel for you there. There's no way. My last one of these I had to follow John, and he gave all the wisdom nuggets. And now I'm following you and your wisdom nuggets. And, it's never fair for me in these things. But, I'll go, and I want to say just kind of going off with the tools, and people who know me know I'm very very forward thinking. I love a lot of the directions that our AV is going, but I'm also very old school. And I think we can't forget about, easily talk about AV. We often forget about the L that comes after AVL, and I'm going to add a letter and add a B. So with audio, can you actually be heard? And I think a lot of times, I mean, we've all been going through meetings all day long, but are you actually able to capture the audio? Are you getting too much background audio? Or can you hear your dogs running? What are those things that are going to make it distracting? And not just do I capture it, but can I not make it distracting? The video and the quality of the video. Are you, and I think that goes with the lighting too, right? I mean, we often forget about that. Are we getting that shadow down on us? Because a lot of people are at their dining room table that is not intended to have the right lighting, or or maybe you are you want the nice view, right? Because you're stuck at your dining room, so you're turning it and you faced outside. Now what kind of shadows are we getting? Is that becoming distracting for the people and the students, right, who need to have that extra attention? It's easy as we are if you're teaching the class, it's easier to be engaged because you're the one delivering that content, right? But now what about the other side that's having to take it in, who has notifications going up on the corner of, of their screen, that has all these other things going on? They see an email pop up or whatever it is, or their own home life. So those things, and then to add the extra letter, the B to the end of AVL, bandwidth. Right. I think that is the huge thing we have to focus on right now, that maybe we take for granted. Yeah. I mean, is being on our laptop outside, on the patio nice this time of year? Probably not this time of year, but when it starts to cool a little bit, but are you cutting in and out and not recognizing it? We've all been in our Zoom meetings where any of these four things has gone wrong. But we can forgive it in a staff meeting. But when you have students who are already in a horrible position and having to learn in a situation that's not best, those four things have to come together just so we have a good base, and then start thinking about all the other tools to kind of pile on top of that, right? And I think it's easy to kind of forget those basics that, old school AV, we would never forget about. Those are the things we would always put in first, and I think maybe get thrown away in a virtual world.
So, Joe, I'm going to, now that you said this, I'm going to accuse you taking the B away from me because you didn't want me to speak, because I was panicked this morning when I've been through the whole pandemic. I think 160 days here, we've lost internet here twice. One time, I have a family relation who works in the industry, and at a big event 2 minutes before, and he was supposed to be the lead, lost internet. So we said, no problem. We set up a secondary so we could go wireless and our cable modem, and neither of them were working. And I'm going, this is crazy. But yeah, I think those basics, you have to be heard, you have to be seen. But the bandwidth is the one where I think we have the greatest level in inequity around the schools. And that's what we found. We were surprised how many of our students were going to parking lots near Starbucks looking for Wi-Fi around locations to be able to get on to it.
Yep. And that, I think that's something that I think that conversation will continue beyond too. That will become a political, or maybe it should be, or whatever, not to jump into that. But you are seeing that. We've had to send out, hotspots to students who relied on campus Wi-Fi to do their studies in their dorm rooms that, they now can't be in. And, so not even just looking at the faculty, which is where the question was kind of based originally, but yes, looking at the students, right? Do they have that? And also not only maybe they do have, the Wi-Fi in their house, but maybe both parents are home working remotely and on their video calls, plus them, maybe they have siblings, everyone's doing this. Where are you going to sit in the house? How the pipe is only so thick, right? And so therefore, these inequities start getting shown more, and especially, in various demographic areas. And that's really a sad thing. And I think we have to think about how to handle that. And every school hopefully has a plan for how to handle that. And again, what's the answer? Who knows? And the sad part is there's no real way to fix that quick.
If I may, one other hurdle that we're starting to see is just the channel contention in the various Wi-Fi stacks that you go into an apartment building, and everybody's got their own Wi-Fi router and a bunch of different addresses. Well, there's only so many channels, and your router does a pretty good job of finding an open channel and sitting on that one. But when that gets really crowded, we're going to start seeing a lot of conflicts from that as well. So yeah, that's going to affect people in more dense urban areas, obviously, than anywhere else. Is this contention for this bandwidth?
Yeah,
Whether it's available or not, that's a whole nother question. But
yeah, we've seen the broadband issue come up as a big thing, and we've been really pushing it from an association perspective for some time, and now it's really reared its ugly head on the inequity of broadband and access, and especially in rural areas. I have board members in Arizona that are dealing with Native American populations that really are having broadband access issues, and so how to provide that, in addition to telehealth services that are being provided out there to make sure that we blanket the country and really kind of control or gain control of the pandemic for the long run, and keep in mind the flu season's coming, other colds and other stuff. So and I think the question was, what other pieces are out there? I mean, the military, date myself a little bit, not military, but worked in a number of efforts with ADL and SCORM and training transformation, looking at how the military transforms. Our U.S. military has been living in a live, virtual, constructive, mixing all these pieces together for quite some time, and are at the best of their game at what they do in the world. And so we have to try to transition that knowledge to both teachers and everyone on a broader scale. I do hear Dana with the parents and recording and video. And so whenever I'm thrown in a hot seat with parents, I try to tell them to sit back, breathe. Your teachers have gone to school quite some time, and more or less I look at folks in the education field as the Peace Corps workers of the country, are doing it for the good of the country and the good of their students. And so, be a partner, not an adversary. And so I do take point with that when I encounter it, from an association perspective, to calm and lower the fears. You're not going to screw up your kid's education in a month because you had the wrong workbook page. And so it's more of a team perspective. There's more than just Zoom. There are so many different tools, and I often just default back to our award winners on our website. I say, here's the button. Go look at those award winners, reach out to them, those Hall of Famers, one on this call, and talk to them, ask them questions. They have the tools that we have looked at and have awarded. And then we also stood up a page, consolidated our information under a coronavirus pandemic page with Google and and a number of our sponsors to kind of consolidate the resources so they're not scouring the entire Google sphere of the internet and trying to find stuff. We kind of squeezed it and also place instructional media guides. If you're going to do video, what route, what tools do you need, asynchronous or synchronous? And so we try to stand there as a bucket to help people navigate. But broadband is going to be an issue. We're teeing that up for a policy forum to address that from a distance learning perspective in October. And it will probably continue for a number of years because there's a price tag to it as well.
You know, Reggie, you bring up a good point. So we talk about inequities in the digital divide. So one question I post back to the panelists here is how do we help these specific demographics that don't have access to Wi-Fi, or they're given a hotspot and it's a household of 6, so that's not going to cover everyone, or they're given one Chromebook. You know, how can we as an industry help with the digital divide?
I'll just throw something out there, and I know that something that Zoom has done is starting hardware as a service types of options, right? Can school districts and stuff kind of bite the bullet and get some temporary options out there and do some leasing models and stuff like that we've had to do that at USC. We recognized that we're doing like laptop loaners, for example, right? Because our computer labs are closed, so therefore students can't come use the labs, so therefore we are doing loaners. Well, we brought in a third-party company to handle that, right? Because I'm not going to go buy 600, 700 laptops, and now when the pandemic's over, what am I going to do with them? Right? So can you bring in and do those as a service models in order to help that? And that might be one solution. Again, it's an economic one. I mean, you hate to say that money can solve everything, but sadly, it's something that we have to think about, and something that I think schools can do and start doing those. I mean, if you recognize, the D10s, the interactive boards, those types of things that have the Zoom enabled, and you send one of those to a household, the little Mii's that are coming out, right? I mean, gosh, what would those cost on a hardware as a service model that you could send out and get in the hands of people? Yeah, there's still might be bandwidth issues, but you can start to solve some of the problems with that type of solution.
I agree with both of you that there is definitely the inequities with the hardware, and the kids need it. And even though we offer them the different Chromebooks, some of them are outdated and not working, so then it'll work for a while. I mean, I love the idea of a company doing this so that the district quits purchasing more and more, and then end up, when they do come back, we're hoping to see children in 3-dimensional form at some point. But they need headsets for families. I have one student who's a family with 6 kids, and they only have so many rooms where they can separate. And if all teachers are doing Zoom at 8 o'clock, that one family alone with 6 kids and 2 parents working from home, there's a lot more that they're going to need. And we don't provide them with headsets. And there's some families who can't afford the headsets to purchase. So all of that is good. And things like, remember, little kids don't know how to type. Some kids don't know their letters yet. So we need to see what they can actually write. So even if we had something as simple as the old rocket books where kids could write on those, but then we don't have everybody, not all kids have a phone to send that picture, to scan it and send it to us. So there are these things. Where I work, I'm lucky, but I would have to figure out a way to purchase the rocket books for the kids, because I want to see what they write. I know there are probably other forms. I'm not schooled in a lot of things, but the rocket book is the one that stands out to me, so that I could see actual writing quickly from them, and to turn their written word into text so they can see what it actually would look like to a reader. I think those kinds of things are important, but how do we get that all out there?
You know, there's a question from Tamiko, and she actually, I feel like she's reading my mind, because she says, I wonder if we can incorporate some adaptive technology for special needs kids into these younger classrooms. I actually had a call just the other day from a parent that knew a friend of mine that said, hey, this guy's at Zoom, let's talk to him. But so she asked me, how can she engage with special needs, specifically autistic kids, right? So with autistic children, they don't really like being on camera. They don't like looking you directly in the eye. And her idea was, what if, and Dana, you mentioned Bitmoji, but what if you had the ability to change the teacher to be a character that made that student feel more comfortable? So I actually mentioned that, and we have a specific person at Zoom now that is a product leader for education, and they're looking at these feature requests. So anything like that, Tamiko, that you have, or any other people, definitely let us know, because we want to build specific tools for the educational field as well.
Well, you have filters now for characters, you know?
Look at you guys.
Or the dog.
Okay.
And the dogs are good.
Oh, yeah.
I need to learn how to use those filters now. I'll get my
Yeah.
kids attentions. I don't know how to do it yet.
The
Yeah,
headset is an issue, getting headsets that fit smaller heads. A very good friend of mine who was a classroom teacher and then eventually left teaching because he became a supplier of headsets for education. And for the headsets for smaller size kids, they're sold out until September. But, I think that is there's a good one there. There is a big challenge in terms of getting that hardware out. We were not able to find reasonably cost cameras for some of our faculty members. Not to seem like a plug, but the 1C, was a big difference. It was a high quality camera. We don't recommend for our faculty to use a built-in camera microphone. We think it's better if there's an external microphone so you get clearer audio. We were having difficulties getting various USB or microphone adapters. It's just been a challenge in getting the proper hardware, even if you have the resources. And then when you find that you're resource shy, that's even more difficult.
Well, I want to first off, this was really informative. I hope that everybody that is going to get a chance to watch this is able to really pull out some great information on it. I think so often in my business and a lot of folks that work alongside me, we look at the education market as just the higher education market, because that's where the lion's share of the budget is. But in all honesty, the lion's share of the students are not there. The lion's share of the students are in elementary, and those are the students that are being left behind right now. And we're doing a good job of working with the universities. We're doing a good job of even bringing some of the high school students up to speed. But where we're falling down is the transition of the lower grade levels of education. How are we transitioning those children? It's one of the reasons I really wanted Dana to sit in here on this webinar. Is her voice is one that's not being heard in the industry as much as it should be. We have somebody that's an absolute professional at what she does, has been doing elementary education longer than most of us have been doing anything. And the fact that she still has these kind of struggles today is a little aggravating. So, if we can do anything to help, we want to do that in the lower grade levels. I think is really an important place to start. Showed the headset, but that is a headset that we developed specifically for K-5 students. you know, there's a lot of things that we can do as manufacturers, but as a culture of distance learning, people like Jason, Reggie, Joe, John, you guys are going to need to help out people like Dana, because they're going to need help.
Well, there, I'll do a plug for Q, which used to stand for Computing Using Educators, but now it's like KFC. They just use the initials. But the Q has affiliate groups, and in the Monterey Bay affiliate, we have an office hour that they do once a week, aimed at K-12. And to quote techies from Q, our goal is if you have a tech problem, if you have an issue, bring it up to the group. And we had our first call just last week, and it starts with tech issues, but then it always goes beyond the tech, as how do you integrate the tech. But you know, Dana, my hat's off to you, and I really think the challenge is, you know, if the administrators and the unions and the government would let teachers alone, we probably could solve it. Dan, my fear is the lower grades. I have two very successful children. I tell my kids if I knew I was going to have such successful kids, I would have had more, but the risk is so high. But you know, I've asked them, you know, how do you, you know, what, yeah, I wanted them to say, what did I do right to help, you know, so I could take some credit. And I said, you know, really, what influenced you the most? And both of them refer to their kindergarten teacher. My son had a bonus year. Men are developmentally slow till 50, and then who cares? But so he had 2 years of kindergarten. My daughter had 1, and to this day, and they're in their late 30s, they still think of, you know, that book, you know, Everything You Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten was true for them. And I think we have a challenge as a society to make sure that we don't lose those experiences. Some of the school kindergarten groups here that have been setting up pods so that groups of kindergartens and trusted families could get together, because that physical contact and meeting with other students is so critical, but then reaching out to them online. So hats off to what you're doing down in San Diego. And it's only scary when you tell me that there are parents who are posting videos and being critical. We need everyone to pull together, and you know, this is still a crisis, and we need to treat it in crisis mode and not in political mode.
And we have, from USDLA perspective, you know, we're doing webinars every Friday, and we have chapters across the country. So feel free to engage those via .org. And so we are here to help. And most of us are educators. So
I'm writing that down.
You got a club, and so reach out.
You know, also the one thing that I want to offer anyone out there is that if you have ideas for features, specifically to education, reach out to me. You always can connect with me on LinkedIn. I'd be happy to listen to you and pass that forward. And the other thing that Reggie mentioned earlier that really hit home to me is that, you know, we have to, as parents and educators, be part of the solution, not just part of the problem, right? So we have to find ways to help. We have to find ways to fund, and we have to teach people best practices so that they can do a better job.
Totally agree. And Jason, I'm going to connect with you too to see what I can learn.
All right, guys. Well, this has been a really, really informative webinar. This is probably one of the better ones, especially since I didn't have a chance to pitch my gear. So I think maybe that's the sacrifice I'll have to make this time. Have to tune in next time, folks, who want to see our stuff. I want to thank everybody for attending, all the people who are watching this, but I also really want to thank everybody here on the panel. Thank you very much. Your input is very valued, and as has been said several times here, the only way we're going to get through this is by pulling together. And so first thing we need to do is listen to each other, find out what some of the challenges are, and everybody has expertise that we can offer. So we can come up with some solutions. We'll beat this. It'll be all right. Okay. And again, I want to thank everybody. If anybody else have anything you want to pitch in?
Just thank everyone for joining.
You bet. Thank you very much.
That was awesome.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Dan, for
everyone.
pulling us together. It's always fun to talk with fellow colleagues, and every time I do this, I pick up something new. So I've got some things to go back to the groups I work with.
Excellent.
And this is being recorded
Yep,
too,
same.
so we'll get it up on YouTube and stuff, so everybody can share it if you want.
All right.
Perfect.
Thanks again, you guys.
Thanks,
Adios.
Be blessed.
Thank you.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Bye.